At Sleep Outfitters Outlet, great sleep is a big deal. Save 40 to 60% every day on every Sealy, Stearns & Foster, and Tempur-Pedic. Queens as low as $249. Customer exchanges, closeouts, and floor samples. Inventory changes daily, so come in for your dream deal today. With no credit-needed financing, expert advice, and up to 60% off retail, it's never been easier to get the sleep and savings you deserve. Go to sleepoutfittersoutlet.com for financing details and to find a store near you.
David's Bridal, where brides and bridesmaids get fabulously dressed. We let our friends pick out what we wear, show off our dance moves, obsess over every little detail, hold your hand through it all, smile bravely when it's time to let go. Make your dreams come true. The things we do for love. Only at David's Bridal.
A choice right now, between fear and love. It's just a rock.
Out of the dark night of ignorance and into the shining light of truth.
Expounding reality. A population of citizens capable of critical thinking.
We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are.
There's a level of reality where everything dissolves into an ocean of energy.
We empower our experience by insisting on our authenticity.
That's very profound. Very.
Expanding reality. Tom Sherman, we are here to first of all talk about, sir, you and this commie calendar of yours, this thing coming in here trying to say, you know what, I can do a better job with this. Fuck this, wishy-washy. Sometimes it's 30, sometimes it's 31. We change all the time. Fucking shit's up in the air. Some people like the destabilization, sort of chaos way of living their life, feeling that it's in a systematic pattern sort of a way. But you, sir, are coming in here and presenting a new idea, which we are big fans of here. And so we're grateful to have you and to host you here. Tom Sherman, if you would, for the audience, introduce yourself for us, bud.
Sure, for sure. Thanks for having me, Brandon. I'm excited to be here on the Expanding Reality podcast, for sure. So basically, my name's Tom Sherman, and I live in Delaware. I'm just a regular old guy, and I invented a new calendar system after discovering the fifth season of the year in 2017. And since then have reinvented time itself to be more mathematically, scientifically sound, logical. And that's kind of overtaken most of my day-to-day activities is peddling a new timekeeping system, a new way to view time, a new perspective. And it's just been a crazy journey. So I'm excited to be here and kind of discuss it with you.
It's fascinating, and I'm grateful you're here, man, honestly. And we had a wonderful conversation the other day, and you guys are absolutely going to love him. So, again, all the ways to find Tom located down in the show description. You all know how to do this. He has some cool things to share with us here, so buckle up. This is going to be awesome. I already am just calling it, okay? Now, ahead of this is time, right? This is what we're talking about here, is the ability to track and to calculate and to coordinate with one another time. And it's one of these things to where we have had discussions on the show. Mike Ricksecker just came on with his book, Travels Through Time. Great book. You guys check it out. And he was discussing the relativity of time and all of these different concepts about paradoxes and just the nature of time itself, and being within it challenges us to see time for what it is or what it could be, or maybe what it is in a larger construct. It's sort of a fish examining that it's in water kind of a thing. And so these ideas, when we talk about, oh, I invented a new calendar, this struck me so hard. I was like, this guy has actually thought, I was with you on your level of thinking to why you would present something like this. That's why I had to have you on, man. So to begin this thing out, what the hell are you talking about this fifth season thing?
Right. So, yeah. So basically, here's what happened is I was in college. I was just I was studying finance, and I actually started studying finance during the 2008 financial crisis, right? And so one day our bond teacher came in and was like, hey, there's negative interest rates and this has never happened before. And this chapter that we're about to learn doesn't make sense, but we're just going to keep learning it. And I was like, this seems like a scam. Like, I'm not sure about this. And so I kind of had a quarter life crisis and was like, do I really want to go to Wall Street and do a bunch of coke and like bang hookers and like just become a terrible person? And not really. That was kind of the answer that I came to.
Yeah.
And
it's
so
option. Yeah.
What's that? It isn't. I mean, look, there's a lot of people that do it, and I'm not disparaging them at all. It's just not for me.
Live your journey. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So then it's kind of like, what do I really want to do with my life? Right. And I was like, I always wanted to be an inventor. I always wanted to be one of those, in the movies, they're like living in a warehouse or a garage and they've got all this crazy stuff going on. And I was like, that's cool. I want to do that.
Yeah.
And so I started keeping a journal. I kept all the journal of all my ideas, all these crazy inventions, all this stuff. And time was just one of these subjects that has always fascinated me, always interested me, because it's like this slippery, magical substance that no one really knows what it is. No one can really explain to you what it is. But it dominates our lives. Every aspect of our lives is dictated by time. And so I started keeping notes on it, started keeping a journal. And fast forward, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years is when I had my sort of eureka moment about the discovering the 5th season. And so I can kind of walk you through that. Let me share my screen real quick.
Yeah, audio only audience. Here's the point where I will invite you to check the video link in the show description down there. That's where you can find this visual version of this show. Come hang out. It's a lot of fun.
All right, let's see. Let's try it in the slideshow. So anyways, look, we all know ice is 32 degrees, 0 degrees for, our metric users. A foot is 12 inches. A pound is 16 ounces. How long is a month? No one knows. Like, it could be 28 days, could be 30, could be 31. Nobody knows. So like, it makes no sense. And so basically, the conclusion that I came to is there's 365 days in a year, and you can only divide 365 evenly. Oh, shoot. Wrong slide. Can only divide 365 evenly using its 2 base factors, 5 and 73. That's it. That's the only way you can divide out 365 into whole even units. So all the other numbers we try to use, 4 comes up with a fraction, 7 is 52.14 weeks. 12 is 30.41 days. It's just bad measurement. It's bad. It's just bad. So the only way to do it is 5 and 73. So I'd come to that conclusion, but it's easy to discount because 5 and 73 are both prime numbers. They're weird to work with. It doesn't really make logical sense. Like, what we want to do as humans is innately divide things by 10 or, all these other numbers that kind of make a little more sense. And that's just, how it was. So I'd come to that conclusion, kind of put it to the side until one January day, I missed a bill payment. All right. And it was because I had a miscommunication with my bank about what a weekday was. They counted Saturdays as weekdays. And so, yeah. So
Since when?
I know,
because
that's
they
what
have
I
to work
said.
on a Saturday.
Right. Yeah. They were like, well, we're open till noon. So,
Right,
you know what
right.
I mean? Like, so I got overdrafted my account, and it was like the final straw. I was like, that's it. I'm tired of it.
Making a new fucking calendar.
Yeah. I'm figuring
Love
this
this.
out once and for all. Right. So
Love
I
this.
took a analog wall calendar off the wall in the kitchen, and I put it down. I'd come to this 5 and 73 conclusion before, didn't really know what to do with it. So I decided to, let's start out on the winter solstice and start numbering days. So I started numbering days 1 through 73. And so from December 21st, the first period ended on March 3rd. And I was like, okay, that's kind of winter. March is when spring traditionally starts in general. The second period went from March 4th until May 15th. And I was like, that kind of lines up. The Memorial holiday is close to that threshold. That's the, start of summer colloquially in America and all that. And then this is the part that blew my mind, was the exact middle period of the middle day of the middle period of the year landed on the summer solstice. And so that's when it like blew my mind. And I was like, oh, time is this thing that actually makes sense if we step back and let it. You know what I mean? Like it is this sort of cyclical beauty that occurs, but we're trying to shoehorn all these different human developed mechanisms on it and just completely butchers it. Yeah. So that was like,
not to interrupt here. I'm getting the imagery of, so, you know, it's sort of like the powers that be or the Matrix or the Archons or whatever the fuck, right? Whatever set this time up and said, here's what we're going to regulate by, even though there's a straight up clock above you. And I do want to ask you about moon cycles and stuff, because I do have some submitted questions from some folks. Is this idea that they gave you an instrument, but it's all out of tune, right? And so it's just off phase. So it's just, you're playing along well enough. You know, you're like, yeah, I'm playing this instrument, but it sounds fucked up. It goes against this natural inclination I have to tap my foot this way or for my ear to want to hear it this way. And this sort of feels like what you've done is tuned the instrument to figure out, hey, this is the way it's supposed to be played.
100%. And what exactly? Because here's the deal is, the calendar was first invented, or the Gregorian one that we use. I mean, there's multiple different calendars across multiple different cultures. The Gregorian calendar was invented over 3,000 years ago by Romulus, as tradition holds. So he was raised by wolves and then decided, hey, I want a better way, and created this calendar system that, for the time, I mean, ancient tech, it was groundbreaking, and it was much better than what they were using at the time. So it stuck, you know what I mean? And so it kind of developed piecemeal since then. And sometimes a dictator or a religious sect or a pope would come in and tinker with it a bit, add their own little things, add their own stuff. And so now what's happened is, instead of having this like clean, beautiful instrument that has been manufactured using modern math, science, logic, from the get-go, we've created this sort of like wonky, mechanism that's really old and ancient.
Yeah, and it's got a bunch of NASCAR stickers on the side of it that say like Catholic Church and all kinds of different shit, right?
Right. And to take the NASCAR analogy a little bit, it's kind of like taking a horse and buggy or a chariot and, you know what I mean, trying to put like gold rims on it and being like, well, see here, it's a better calendar now, versus like, we should be flying a rocket ship. You know what I mean? Like, we should be able to step back, understand what time is and just like take off.
Yeah. And similarly, it's sponsored content. So basically what's played through that instrument, has the voice of this tuned to those sponsors that have their stickers attached to it, right?
I mean, yeah, there's definitely a lot of power in time, a lot of power in telling people what time it is and when they need to do things. And so there's, I'd like to talk about big calendar all the time, and
big calendar, like Big Pharma,
big calendar.
I love it.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
They're out there. You know what?
I mean?
I actually fucking thought of this, and I'm not going to jump ahead on this, but I thought of this as it pertains to you, rather. Big calendar is a fucking thing, because if you think about it, I don't know what billion-dollar industry that is. Do you have a number for that, just offhand?
Actually, I was talking to a reporter recently, and she said it was the paper calendar industry is a $30 billion industry.
Easy.
Like that.
That's lowball. Yeah. They're not even telling you about all the other shit they're smuggling.
Right.
But what I'm saying is if your calendar doesn't need to be updated, which is the fucking thing about it. You created the 100-year light bulb or the stride of gum, right? The everlasting gobstopper. Like you are upsetting an apple cart to the tune of $36 billion, my friend. So just keep that in mind, man, when you see the helicopters and shit, okay?
No, it's true. I recently I came across an article about a guy named Tom Ogle, I think his name was, and he was a mechanic from El Paso, Texas, who invented a 100 mile per hour or 100 mile per gallon car back in the 70s, and he got a patent on it, and then meteorological. Oh man, I'm not gonna be able to say it, but
meteorological.
Meteor rise. He just he catapulted to everyone was like, oh wow, this whole Oglemobile is going to change the world, and then within a year or two, he was broke and dead in his apartment, and everyone was like, "Oh yeah, it was probably just it wasn't it wasn't the oil companies that murdered him for sure.
No,
yeah,
just wasn't meant to be. Yeah,
right. And now we lost his technology, and no
course.
one, you know what I mean? We don't have 100 mile per gallon cars, and it's like, anyways, so yeah, no, there are definitely powerful interests. Like controlling time is a huge thing.
Fuck yeah,
huge thing. So
especially your perception of time, like because both are
right.
so hand in hand. The controlling of it and your perception of it, which are the same thing. We're going to talk about it because time is crazy, man. But please continue.
And yeah, and just real quick before I get back to the slides is like that's the first thing you learn in kindergarten is this is one of the realizations I came to working on this project is like first thing I learned in kindergarten was like there's 4 seasons in a year and there's these 7 days in the week and these are the months. And then like by 3rd grade, they taught us the rhyme of 30 days, that's September, April, June, and November, so that you can remember how many days are in a month. And it's like we've created all these systems and then inject it directly into ourselves at such a young age that by the time we get to high school, college, capacity age where we can think for ourselves and analyze things and really critically understand what's going on, it's been so ingrained that we don't even think about it anymore. Like, you know what I mean? It's like learning. It's like if they like taught you physics in kindergarten and then you never thought about science for the rest of your life, or, you know what I mean? Or like they taught you like something super complex and then was like, all right, now stop thinking about that. And, that's just the way it is. And don't even think about it. So,
it's a brilliant point. Brilliant point you bring up.
So yeah, it's just crazy. And so here, just to quickly get through this slide real quick. So basically after that clicked, I was like, all right, this system is real. Winter solstice, the exact middle day of the middle period of the year is the summer solstice. That works. And so summer goes from May 16th till July 27th. The new period of the year that I like to call autumn goes from July 28th until October 8th. And it's kind of like an inverse of spring. There's the, late season crops are coming in, like your sweet corn, your watermelon, migrations are starting to reverse. It's on the East Coast here, we call them hurricanes instead of nor'easters. It's just one of those things that it's like inverse. And then the final period of the year is fall, October 9th until December 20th. And that's your classic sort of leaves turn brown, fall on the ground. And so that was like after I did that math part, lined it up with this sort of science part of the Earth's orbital rotation. That's when it all clicked. And then from there, it was just a matter of applying sound metrological principles, which metrology is the study of measurement. My wife's dad actually is a physicist, and he told me about it. He was like, oh, you're doing metrology. And I was like, what are you, what? He was like, metrology. I was like, that's not a thing. Like, you're saying meteorology wrong.
Awesome. Yeah. You're mispronouncing something.
Yeah. Like, you don't know what you're talking about, but he did actually a little bit, not all the time, but sometimes. So anyways, that's kind of the basic premise of it. And so then from there, it was all about creating what makes a good measurement system. You know what I mean? And it's things like having uniform units that are always the same and can be repeatable. It's about having units that build up into larger units that can then be repeated again and again. So like right now, one of the big problems with the calendar is we try to shoehorn the 7-day week into the whole system. And then, but no months are created out of a full series of weeks, except for February, which is the one month of the year that is glaringly, obviously not like the rest of the months. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, we're just living in such ridiculous times and such a ridiculous system, but like we have to. So like, it's like, you know what, accept it. And you know what I mean? Move on. Like, I'm worried about food, shelter, and water. I'm not worried about trying to figure out who's, pulling a fast one on me here.
It's all the same thing, though, I think. I was going to ask you about the equinoxes, and it looks like you have it covered here because of the expanded second and third second and fourth rather seasons. But this is interesting, man. I got to be honest, summers, and when they said, no, it's not summer yet, or no, it's not this yet, but it felt like that, or they were like, no, it's winter now. But I was like, actually, winter's not for a little while now because it doesn't really get cold until a little later on, but you're calling it winter now. It's an interesting sort of a thing that you bring up here that intuitively, I mean, this sort of fluctuates. Now, I want to know, and just because we're here and you've got this awesome thing pulled up here, this beautiful graph, by the way, like my mind loves what you've done with this place because it does make sense. It is mathematically sound. It would seem that the clock above our heads would offer this sort of experience. You know, it lends to this on experience on the ground here. It's amazing how you thought to divide the summer in half like that and still keep it the same season, because here in Texas it feels like summers are at least 3 of those seasons, you know. And it's like it's just a fascinating way what you've done with this. So the moon is what I want to bring up in this conversation. Sure. So what effect do you think that the moon plays on this? Because one of the points that was brought up in my excitement to bring you on here was the moon cycles and natural cycles and rhythms that we see around us in nature. How does this compare to those observations?
Right. So here's the This is some that's a subject that I had to wrestle with, like throughout the development and research and creation of the system that I'm proposing. So yeah, most cultures have two options. You either have a lunar calendar or a solar calendar, right? And so the lunar calendar is good for, you know, tracking the moon cycles, which, like you say, it affects a lot of things. It affects tides. It affects, you know, equilibriums. It like if you talk to gardeners have like this superstition of like planting after a full moon is better than, you know what I mean, like planting during a new moon or whatnot. And so like the moon definitely affects a lot of stuff, animals and migration patterns and you know what I mean, all that sort of stuff. But I decided to focus on the solar calendar, which is the you know, the Earth's journey compared to the sun, because that is how we as humans, like the most intuitive unit of time that we can observe is a day. The sun rises and the sun sets, and like it makes sense to us. Where, you know, so what happens with the moon cycles is they're closer to like a 28, 29 day cycle. And so what will happen is you'll observe a full calendar on the moon, but it doesn't fully align with the solar calendar. And so then you kind of get this date shift where slowly over time, what starts as the first month of the year, and say you start your lunar calendar on the winter solstice, at a certain point, that first month is going to shift into spring and then into summer, because you're not fully dividing the solar year up. You're dividing the lunar year. And so that's why in like the Islamic calendar is a great example. The Islamic calendar is a lunar calendar, and they celebrate Ramadan, which is you have to fast during the day and, you know what I mean, eat at night. But some years it's in the middle of winter, and so the days are really short, and so it's easy to observe. Some years it's in summer, and so it's like slowly shifting over time. And so it's from that angle, using a lunar calendar is very hard to create a anchored system that we understand intuitively by the seasonal changes we observe. And since, you know, agriculture is such a big thing in human history and human development, solar calendars often were favored for, you know, being able to planting crops at the right time, or knowing when the migrations are occurring, and that sort of thing. So there are calendars that are loony solar calendars that are like an intense mashup. I think the Chinese calendar is a loony solar calendar, and that is and it's super complex and interesting. But at the same time, it's still not, in my view, it still just wasn't the most practical way to observe a single year, because in a lunar solar calendar, I think you have different year lengths on certain years or something like that, where to keep the moon cycles and the sun cycles in alignment, You have to do minor adjustments. And that's one of those things that this, time is this slippery substance, because we're like every year is just a little bit different. And so like next year, today is going to be tomorrow. And so then next year, when you and I are talking, we're like, oh, when were we talking the other day? And it's like, oh, well, we were talking on the 27th of October. And it's like, no, but we were talking on a Friday, and it's a Wednesday now. So like, how does that make sense? And you know what I mean? And it's like, it's just one of those things that it's just too opaque and too vague to really to understand. But in this system, if you divide the solar year according to its numbers and its math, and anchor it down, then today is always going to be today. Today is always a Mercury day, and it's always the 19th of early fall. And it's you know what I mean? It's one of those things where you don't have to expend that sort of mental energy trying to figure out what exactly, when something happened, what exactly is happening. And, that often just breeds confusion, and people are like, whatever, I don't care. So yeah, I don't know. I hope that answers the question a little bit.
Incredibly well, my friend. Tom, if there was ever a representative for this, you nailed it. And so, of course, it was given to you. You know what I mean? It feels like, was this handed to you like via some Tesla type stuff, where you said he was gifted from angels or aliens or voices or anything like that?
Totally. No, I like, my belief in God, the universal highest power or whatever, has completely been deepened throughout this process, because there's just so many little like serendipities that occur throughout it. Like, it's, you know what I mean? That it's just a beautiful system, and it's a beautiful, like, I discovered the fifth season. I didn't invent it. You know what I mean? I peeled the curtain back a little bit. And so
they're interchangeable. Autumn and fall, people say, oh, they're kind of interchangeable. Or no, autumn is sort of early fall, but they're already delineable seasons in the mind of places where they get seasons. We're not privy to this argument down here in Texas. We get two seasons.
Yeah,
and they both
I get a lot of that from, so like, I'm from Delaware. I'm in the mid-Atlantic, so I have a huge like mid-Atlantic skew to the 5 seasons.
Right.
But I will challenge you and everybody else, people in Florida, people in California who like to tell me that they don't have seasons. Yeah, y'all do have seasons. It's just, like my aunt lives in California. You go there, you look at the grapefruit trees, right? Like, their grapefruit trees aren't always fruiting. They're fruiting in autumn. You know what I mean? They're flowering in spring. They're fully leafed out in summer. They're, you know what I mean? They're in their state of hibernation throughout winter. Like, so like there's definitely the the types of animals that you see, the local plants will be flowering at certain times. They'll be migrating at certain times. The like different things will be, the monarch butterflies are always on their journey, thousands of miles to and fro. So although like there's not the traditional sort of, it's snowing, so it's winter, or, I live in the desert. No trees have leaves that fall. You know what I mean? Like, even though there's not that, there's still the cyclical cycles that occur from year to year that, if you step back and take a look through a different lens, you'll notice them. And so after I'd made this sort of discovery, I was like, at first I was like, how do I sell this thing without having to use it? You know what I mean? Like, this is crazy, but I don't want to be the guy that's, and so, but then I was like, you know what? Like, I'm not going to be able to convince anybody that this is a better system if I'm not using it. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, try this new calendar. I never touch this stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, I don't get high on my own supply.
There you go.
Right. But you know what I mean? So I was like, you know what? I'll take a hit. And it was like living in my own little magical world, because like on March 4th, like you go out and you look at the trees, they might not be leafing out necessarily. They might not have flowers on them, but you'll see the little buds where they're starting, you know what I mean? Like, it's starting to happen. And like you hit these sort of like liminal spaces on each of the time period, seasonal changes. And there's just like, if you're observant enough, like, they're there. Like the autumn and fall, like and I actually made this observation a couple years before the discovery of the calendar, was I wanted to know when did the leaves change? You know what I mean? Like what day the leaves were changing. And in my journal, it was October 5th. And so that was the first day that I was a dog walker at the time. So I was outside all the time. And first day that I saw just the slightest tinge of red in all these deciduous green trees. And I wrote that down. And then fast forward 3 or 4 years when I'm doing this system out and the line falls on October 8th, October 9th, I was like, holy shit. Like that's, you know what I mean? Like it lines up. Like it's just like all this sort of magical place that I was living in by myself. And it was beautiful. That's and so here, I think my next slides kind of go through. So yeah, so this is an apple tree. All right. I had my buddy David Luna draw me an apple tree throughout the seasons. Out.
Yeah, he did a great
big
job.
Shout out to David Luna. He's the best. He's we could do a whole podcast on him.
We'll set it up.
So winter, December 21st, March 3rd, cold, long, dark nights, etc. Spring, the trees are flowering, things are thawing, life is reemerging, all that sort of stuff. Summer, fully green, you got your peak sunshine, peak temperatures. Autumn, you get the apples, fully ripened on the tree. Like the harvest is coming in, and the heat breaks. It's the classic thing to do in the first week of autumn is to go around and talk to people and say, oh, do you think the heat will ever break? You know what I mean? Like that's that time of year where everyone's like, it's so hot. Like it's never going to be hot. It's always going to be hot again. And it's like, no, just wait like 3 more days. It'll be fine. And a huge thunderstorm will come through and cool things down, and we'll be back to regularly scheduled program. And then fall, the leaves fall, nights get long. And so I think that I think the apple tree kind of really helps put it together of, you're back at the beginning in winter of no leaves, you get the flowering buds, you get fully greened, you get the fruit ripened, and then the stuff falls down. And like I said, you could translate that to other things like a grapefruit and an orange tree or whatever your local sort of flora and fauna is. You'll find those cycles.
And it's almost like an ecological journey of our journey. You look here, you go through these cycles where you're flourishing and you're crushing, and then all of a sudden it's long nights and it's cold, right? And then you come out of that and you're flourishing again into a new respect. Right. So it's interesting that you point out the cycles, which is why I'm so fascinated by this. It seems so much more useful here, which I definitely want to tie in a psyop element. You and I are going to really go for it on this, okay? But okay. What I mean to start it here with is that the solar element to this seems so much more practical because it is observable. Not that the moon isn't, but there's an argument to be made that the moon was brought here. And now whenever you talk about this apprehension and this coloring of our experience and this warping of time, because months, are named so because moon, right? Moons, and they're named after the moon cycle. So the interesting part to this now is that when you frame it to what you have here, you have a structured sort of what the environment itself meant to be minus the moon, if it's a real thing that our life is dependent on at all, which is conjecture because there's evidence of ancient cultures, more than one, several, that have written about a time before the moon. And so then you look into the work of, because you also dabble into some interesting philosophies as well, the archons and a soul trap in the work of David Icke, and it brought here the work of, damn it, I'm going to fart on this guy's name. He hadn't been Alex Coyer and the hollow moon and things like this, to where it's an artificial satellite, if there is a space and all that kind of stuff. So this sort of apprehension of a celestial body, whatever the fuck that thing is, and us basing our time here on it seems fucked off to match the design. And it yields the results of the destability that it does in all other areas as well. So what's funny about this and interesting to me, just as we're talking about this, is getting off of all apprehended cycles here. Observable cycles we can see, which is what you've done. You've just taken your observation and laid it out in a way that's applicable for you, but also mathematically, it's very interesting to where it benefits us at a greater capacity. Also, you're going to take down Big Calendar, which I'm right here for you on, brother. You can come up with a new one every year, just come up with a new design, all that kind of shit. I don't think you're going to kill it. But what I mean to say is it's a brilliant design that gets us off this moon apprehension. What do you think of that whole concept there?
That's super interesting. I think that so my take on like the moon in general, as like you say, extending into months. Um, so when you're looking at like from the metrological standpoint, just the study of measurement of systems, right? Like you need a good system has one of its features. It has short term or small units. It's got long term units and it's got midterm units. You know what I mean? So that you can build up small frequencies into a larger frequency, and then you build up those larger frequencies into another large frequency, right? And so so in our case, multiple days turn into a week, multiple weeks turn into a month, multiple months turn into a year. From the moon's perspective, I think the reason why it got it's such a strong unit of time, or dictates months and these timekeeping units, is because, like I was saying earlier, where a day is very intuitive for us, we wake up, we go to sleep. It's hard to count from day 1 to day 365 and not lose track. You know what I mean? But what's easier is, as we're going to sleep at night, we notice, hey, it's a full moon. And so it's easier to count from 1 to 28 or 1 to 29 until that cycle repeats itself. And so moon cycles then became months because we needed this sort of midterm unit to count between a day and a month, and then multiple months turn into these seasonal changes that we observe. And then the seasonal changes turn into this annual cycle that we observe. And so that's kind of where, from my research and my thinking, that's kind of where the moon plays into all of this. And like you say, it can create this sort of uneasiness because it doesn't really line up well. You know what I mean? And so then we get this, it's incongruity between what we're observing and what we're feeling. And then all of a sudden, if you're just counting months, like we were saying earlier, then all of a sudden, it turns into what was a month in winter is a month in summer. And it's like, that's not right. Like, you know what I mean? Like January is not in summer, January is in winter. And so it's these, the time keeping systems that we've come up with is kind of like a death by 1,000 cuts. You know what I mean? There's nothing like super glaringly obviously wrong about a lot. Like it works, you know what I mean? Like we've gotten where we are using it, but at the same time, just like all these small little things, it's like getting paper cuts all over you. And then all of a sudden, anytime you move, you're like, ow, like, why is that so uncomfortable? And it's because we're using this ancient tech, which at the time was cutting edge. It was groundbreaking, and it was amazing. And it helped us, expand our cultures and civilizations. But now we're at a point where we can step back, or should be able to step back and say, hey, let's reevaluate what's going on. You know what I mean? Like what other technology do we really use consistently day in and day out that is thousands of years old and hasn't been updated since the 1500s? You know what I mean? Like nothing. Like even the wheel, we've turned into a rubberized wheel filled with air that, you know what I mean? Like all of the technology that our ancestors have created, and we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. It all deserves a clean, review and clean break from the past, just because, when you're off, you've heard the thing before, maybe, where when you're off by 1%, and if you keep getting off by 1%, then all of a sudden you're off by 100%. And so, I don't know. Again, I don't know if I answer. Like, that's the beauty of time, is like, I love fielding these questions and then going down a rabbit hole and being like, I don't really remember what the question was, but I hope I answered it.
The way that you're communicating here is perfect. This is perfect. You're right on par with this, and what it feels like as you're talking about this, is, because I'm enamored of what you're saying, is it's like you're introducing the concept of water to a society that only survives on, Brondo and does not understand. They're like, but dude, it's got electrolytes. They're like, but bro, there's like 12 of these things. We get little flags, we get little names for them. It's the moon's right there. Can't you see it? I love though what you said about that the moon is a mini cycle, and it is easier to count to 12-ish than it is to 365 and use that as a unit of time. But what it feels like, again, is sort of that was the rough draft or the training wheels. It got us to these greater understandings that we as a modern people is just trying to figure this shit out, minus the hidden shit that people really fucking know what's going on, right? Folks like you and I out here doing this, then it seems like that is sort of a way that it will get you started thinking in that right direction, but at a certain point it becomes no longer necessary, or to your point and great vocab usage there, it becomes deciduous, because we are deciduous. You can shed that which is no longer needed. And so you can remove them like these leaves and say, you know what, that was a cool system. It got us where we are. We get why we needed it. It was a good rough draft, but we don't need to read from those pages anymore. We've come up with a better version based on that information. So it's an interesting concept that you offer here, which is a progression for humanity as a whole, to say, hey, guys, we figured something out here. You may want to try this out. Especially folks listening to this place, they're stuck on the moon thing now, apprehending their days and thinking, how the fuck do I get off of that thing? Because we're talking Archon soul traps and shit a lot on here. We're doing that lately. So with this kind of idea, it's just, again, fascinating to me. So I do want to wrap up or come back to, rather, before we get too deep into this, because that's what we're going to do here. And I just love this, by the way, is to talk about other countries and their calendars, because not everybody is on the same damn system that we are. And so let's start there. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's one of those things that it's kind of like how cultures across the world all built pyramids, right? Where like it's fulfilling a need of some sort, and like what that need is different based on your culture, based on your location, your longitude, your latitude, and your local, flora and fauna, how you're surviving. And so, yeah, I mean, it of course it makes sense that different timekeeping systems have evolved different ways throughout different societies throughout the years. Yeah, I mean, you know what I mean? Like that makes sense. And the crazy part, I like to tell people all the time, because I show this to people, the calendar, and they're like, well, I mean, so one time I submitted a grant proposal to the National Science Foundation, where it was a small business innovation fund, right? For cutting edge research that's like too expensive and too time consuming that, no one's going to invest in it or whatever. And I was like, dude, this is perfect, right? Yeah. Like this is based on science. Like I can show you the numbers. I'll show you the data. And I got a reply back from the guy. He's like, this is crazy. Like if we change the world to like, it's going to cost billions of dollars and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, dude, I thought that the whole point of this thing was to research, you know what I mean, whether that's cost effective or not. But that, you know what I mean?
No, we've come too far with the narrative. We can't turn back now. The same reason like this alleged high tech won't ever be revealed to us, or won't, maybe, to some degree, because it'll topple the oil industries and the gas industries and things of them, you paying to live here, right? It would topple those industries, just as the idea of a revelation of entities from, I don't know, extra dimensional or wherever they're coming from would topple religions and things, right? So again, what you're doing is introducing water to well saturated Brondo fans here, and it's you okay with being like the leader of some breakaway civilization and just letting this be out there for folks that want to enjoy it?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's definitely, that's part of the vision is democratizing time, getting it back into the hands of the people, because time is money, time is power, and it's always been controlled. The Gregorian calendar, at least, has always been controlled by powerful elites, the political leaders, the religious leaders, back to political leaders, and then back to religious leaders. So like, here's something cool is so all right, so Romulus created the calendar, right? And he's building up Rome. It's going well. What they used to do was there was a certain temple in Rome who controlled the calendar, and so the calendar wasn't published in advance, and people didn't have copies on it. What would happen is at the end of each month, they would come out and say, all right, here's the new calends, and this is the next month's, schedules. and what these priestesses and priests started doing is if there was a ruler in power who they liked, they would add a few days onto each month before they released the next month's calendar. And so then all of a sudden extending the rule slightly longer and longer each month until, they may have gotten, 20, 30 extra days, a full extra month's worth of somebody who they liked in power being in power before, the next election came. I know, right?
I did not know that at all. That's awesome.
Crazy. Then this dude came along named Flavius, and he made the Flavian reforms, he was like, no, we're publishing the whole thing. We're publishing the whole thing out so people know, because this is bullshit. You know what I mean? Bullshit. Like, you can't be doing that. And they lost, you know what I mean? Like, they lost their shit. The powerful at the time, they were like, what are you doing? Like, you're giving away our power to, you know what I mean? Like, the people like that. And that's one of the few calendar reforms in the Gregorian system that occurred that I think was in the best interest of the people. I mean, maybe, like Pope Gregory's additions, basically all he did was minorly change leap day to make sure that it kept our cycle in alignment, which helped, but it's kind of like tinkering on the edges of the system and putting a new paint job on it versus, radically reforming it.
Polishing a turd. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, there's been a lot of that sort of thing where the people who are in charge of time control it. And at some point, if you're smart enough and you're in power, you realize it's in my best interest, not to help people out. and that's kind of bogus. I don't subscribe to that theory of thought, but like, that's how the world works to some degree. And the only way that this is why I also, like, I'm not the first person to discover that there's 5 seasons in a year, right? Like, people have done math a lot longer than me. I'm not like the first person to create a calendar reform and pitch it out or anything like that. But the difference is we live in a time and a place that I'm allowed to propose this radical thought where, like, if we were in medieval Europe and I said, hey, the Pope's wrong, there's 5 seasons in a year, like, I'd
straight to jail.
I'd be dead before I got like and so I think that's kind of like one of the things of like being in the right place at the right time is the reason I'm able to have like propose this calendar and stand on the basis of modern math and science and feel like I'm on a bedrock that I'll take on any challengers who want to, nitpick at the system. And I have for the past, 7, 8, 9 years or whatever. And it's but it's because we're in a place where freedom of thought, freedom of expression is available that I'm able to propose this and not necessarily worry about, is the Pope going to catch word of it and, off me? And like we said earlier, like, there probably are some interests out there who don't want me to, propose things like this. But at the same time, I'm like a bug. I'm like a little fly. You know what I mean? Man. They're not worried about me right now. They're going to be worried about me in whatever, like 5 or 10 years, whenever traction really picks up and people are openly questioning it. And I'm not like, you should see the reactions I get from people when I say, hey, can I interest you in a 5th season of the year? I mean, it's like some people get angry, like some people get mad. And
I would think the commerce industry would jump on it, man. It's another reason to spend money, So I think if this is marketed properly to the marketing industry, and that may be a way to slip your foot in the door and then kind of apprehend the Matrix by its balls, beating it at its own game, that may be a way of introducing this thing to where it's just so compelling because, oh my God, now guys, you have to do autumn clothes now and instead of fall clothes. Right. Now there's not 4 seasons, there's 5 seasons, right? That's an extra reason to spend money. And the Matrix may find that appealing. I just think it's interesting. Sure. Also, I would like to point out, just for the nerdy fans of mine that know my kind of humor, that Flavian was also keeper of time and he freed time, but Flavor Flav were a huge timepiece. And so he was also sort of a liberator of time and our hearts as well.
Hadn't thought about Flavor Flavian. Wow,
yeah, Flavor
that's
Flavian,
like
it's in there. That's a new T-shirt
mashup.
for you.
That's a dope mashup. I love it.
We're here for these kinds of things, and thank you for entertaining me on that. So
great.
I definitely so you touched on leap year, which works perfectly. But what do you think about, because when you talk about seasons, and I get your ideal observational cycles, which is brilliant, man. And you're right, we do have 4 seasons ish here. We have a shitload of summer. We have a crazy winter just for some damn reason because we live on the plains and shit. But we have maybe 2 or 3 weeks of what we'd call fall, and then 2 or 3 weeks of maybe a springy or wetter, kind of more humid type of an environment. So yes, there is sort of a cyclical nature to this. But do you think that your observation of this calendar, even mathematically based on the sun, would be different based on latitudes, like different places in the world?
Yeah, totally. That's a great point. And let me get to a slide. Let's see. Oh, perfect. Love it. It's almost like I was prepared.
Hey, this is awesome. We did not discuss this, by the way. That's awesome.
That's all right. So this on the screen right now is the daily sunlight amount throughout the year. Okay, based on our current meteorological seasons. So what the weathermen like to use for what winter, spring, summer, and fall are. And first, I brought this up just because it doesn't really make sense. I mean, you can see there are some parts on it that here's the fall and spring crossover. That's the equinoxes. You can see there's a height of summer and a low of winter. So but then on the far side, on the far right, look at these units. They don't all, there's a 90-day unit, there's a 91-day unit, 292-day units. It's a bad graph. Like if I was a math teacher and I got this, I'd maybe give it like a C+. You know what I mean? Like
you're nicer than I am. I failed the thing. I'd wad it up. I make him eat it in front of everyone. This is garbage.
Right. All right. So here's the same data with the under the new calendar. Right. So it just creates a much better,
it's a DNA strand, dude.
Oh shit. It
okay,
is
you
a
see
DNA
it? It's a
strand.
DNA strand. It's sacred geometry. It's these cross vortices. It's these points that we talk about in all kinds of crazy fun physics talks with our friend Dave Zed. Like this is lined up. This is symmetrical.
Yeah.
This seems like more of an oscillation pattern that is in phase, if you will, right? It's not out of phase like the other one if we're talking cymatics or applying this to vibration or something.
Yes, exactly. And then you're able to see some interesting points where you're like, all right, there's a point right here where spring, fall, summer, or autumn and winter are all it's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
And so anyways,
A+, man. Extra credit for this, actually. Yeah.
That's what I go for. So as you can see up here, this is for Washington, D.C., just because, like I said, I'm from the mid-Atlantic. And so that's what I normally do. But in the I've run this chart out at different latitudes. So I did one for Caribou, Minnesota, which is the northernmost point of the continental U.S. I did one for Key West, Florida, the southernmost point of the continental U.S. And basically what happens is this graph either gets expanded or compressed.
Yes, I knew it. So this would apply then at like the poles or whatever, or what they're saying are the poles. Is that right?
Right. So the poles, it gets much greater, the changes of daily sunlight. And then like where you are in Texas and down in Florida, they're much more compressed and less visible as far as daily sunlight hours and that sort of thing.
And if this is a simulation or something, let's say, and you're offered different environments of experience, this would be a wonderful way for the simulation to render those environments based on these parameters. It's an algorithm. Say you get this much of a compression of these ratios of this weather, and that's what that experience will offer you in that area or that sector of the realm.
Right. And I mean, that's kind of like, it's super interesting. The whole, like, are we living in a situation or simulation line of thought? And I was actually just watching a video of Neil deGrasse Tyson talking to somebody about that, where the physicist he was interviewing said, like when you break down these natural algorithms or whatnot, like at some point it turns into binary code that we'd find in our computers. And so the question really from my angle is, does that mean that we're in a simulation, or does it mean that we're inherently going to code in the nature that we live in into our simulations? You know what I mean? Like,
now you're asking the real ones, man. Yes.
Right. Because like, I kind of tend to think that, you can't really separate yourself from your nature. And so even if you don't really see it or understand it fully, like you're still going to embed it in what you're creating. And so I think if a computer scientist ends up creating something that mimics nature, whether they knew it or not, I think that's a very natural progression. And, there's an old story Stephen Hawking used to say, and physicists really enjoy, which is the turtles all the way down. You ever heard the turtles all the way down story?
No.
All right. So this guy, he's I don't know, pick a well-known physicist. I forget the guy's name. I don't know, whatever. Einstein.
Albert
It wasn't
Hoffman.
Einstein, but sure. Perfect.
Okay.
He was giving a talk, right, in a lecture back in, the whatever, 30s or 40s. And he's talking about the Big Bang and the universe and all the natural systems that be or whatever. And after the talk, this old lady comes up to him from the back of the auditorium, and she says, there's like, you're wrong. Like, you know what I mean? Like we're living on the back of a turtle, right? And the turtle is slowly progressing around. And so this guy, he's like, well, what's that turtle standing on? You know what I mean? And she's like, well, of course it's standing on another turtle. And he says, well, what's that turtle standing on? She says, well, a turtle. And he's like, well, what's that? And she's like, you don't understand, do you? It's turtles all the way down. And so like, that's where that phrase comes from, of turtles all the way down. And that's kind of, you know what I mean? Like at some point, the whole fractal energy of nature, maybe we are in a simulation of a simulation of a simulation of a simulation. Like no one really knows. And like and earlier I was saying my faith got deepened throughout this process. And that's because like when you trace back time all the way to the origins of the Big Bang or whatever, like no one knows what's happening prior to the Big Bang. You talk to the best, they don't even know what type of physics existed before the Big Bang. You know what I mean? Like, so we can't, all we can do is have faith that something happened that created this universe. Was it somebody turned on a CPU? Maybe. Was it, like the Family Guy episode, God lit a fart? You know what I mean? Who knows? Like nobody knows. And that's why, when you talk to a lot of these theoretical physicists who spend so much time, trying to explain the universe and explain nature, at some point they all end up with a much deeper faith in higher powers, because you can't explain everything. And at least not yet. And until that universal, equation comes across, that's how it's always going to be. And, it's just a beautiful universe that we live in a beautiful world we live in. I don't, the conflict between science and religion, I don't view as valid, because science was created from religion. I mean, science means to know, and what they were doing back in the day was trying to know the face of God, right? So they're exploring all these different things. So, you know what I mean? All we're really doing is describing, unexplainable things in the end. And no matter how much knowledge we gain and how much closer we get, it's kind of like, what is it? Zeno's paradox, where, you know what I mean? Like halfway is halfway is halfway is halfway is halfway. And we're never going to get to that finish line. We're just going to be, so close, so tantalizingly close, and yet so far from being able to, say what exactly is happening. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that answered.
Incredible.
I don't know what
of course it does.
Know what the question was.
It doesn't matter. What we're doing is talking about it, and this is perfect. So you're nailing this, man. I love that you mentioned turtles and turtles all the way down. Something interesting as well that you mentioned is to a simulation sort of a thing. Like, would there be a way that you could tell that there was that you were in a simulation, to that Mario and Daisy thing. They're sitting there on the castle, right? And he says, there's no way to tell that we're in a simulation, right? But what if there was? What if there were little keys left in here, like the fact that it's so goddamn mathematical, and that this is reducible down to binary, even through our biggest physicists, which then does marry this idea of religion, spirituality, that whole realm, to a more physical observation or science-based environment or reality. Then you start to look at this thing, and again, I'm glad you cycling it back to turtles, that turtles may be the key to all of this, to unlocking this shit. One of the ways that you would know is that there would be something out of sync, okay? Something just slightly askew that would make the patterns not work out amongst a bunch of patterns. Maybe there is sort of a layer of fabric of consistency here, consistent enough, but there's a slight askew. Maybe the moon is pointing this out to us. It's the only damn thing that doesn't spin around according to what everybody's telling us, right? It also was, again, perhaps brought here. It also has really odd orbits. It fluctuates a little bit. Now, another thing is, whenever there's a solar eclipse, I don't know what they're looking at. That's a black spot that's going in front of the moon, or the sun, but that's not the moon. There's no fucking moon there. You can't see a moon on either side of it either time. I will argue this forever. My own observation will prove it. The other thing about this is the turtle, okay? If the turtle is what indigenous cultures would use as a calendar, okay? They would use the 13 tabs or the segments and then the 28 around the outside. So maybe that's a clue that's walking around here that's then to this idea that we're all stacked on turtles, again, to this higher philosophical idea of what this reality actually is, that maybe turtles are the key here, and that when they die, their shells are left, right? And so it's this interesting... I think of its tie-in to the apprehension of this reality, that it may be a key to point out to that, hey, the moon is something that's fucking this place up. And that's sort of the key, and your way of looking at this place and going, there's something fucked up here. And the moon is your observational reality of that. And the fact that there's a woven tapestry of us being demanded to utilize it as our unit of time, right? So again, all of these apprehensions and consciousness sort of add up to me on a little bit of a level, and especially the fact that you mentioned turtles. And again, it being a moon-based time calendar, right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean,
it's a weird place, dude.
It's, dude, and like that's sort of the whole premise behind all of it is like something's not right. And I have these calendars, and I it comes with a user guide, right? Like you can only, because you need a user guide, and I have a frequently asked questions section, and one of them is like, why are you doing this? Because that's the most often the question I get first.
Probably from your mom mostly, right?
Oh, dude, my family is so I
have
concerned.
the same mom as you, which is why I can confidently say that we share that. Yeah.
Why are you doing this? And the answer is, I'm doing it because no one else will. You know what I mean? Like somebody's got to do it. Like something's wrong. You can't talk to anybody and they'll be like, oh yeah, it's a perfect time. Like the timekeeping system we have is perfect. You know what I mean? Like, no one says that. Everyone complains about how sometimes there's 4 weekends in this month, and then there's 5 weekends in a month.
Mother's Day and Thanksgiving, and like,
right? You can't
it's
keep
never
track of anything.
Ironically, never a good time to bring it up, dude. Mm-hmm. But you're just ripping the Band-Aid off of this bitch. I love it.
Just doing it. It's because again, somebody's got to do it, and I'm happy to take up that charge and go through it, because it's so important that we understand what's going on. And like you were saying earlier, basically where I've felt this for a long time, is it's kind of like you just wake up and you're here. You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden you're 4 years old and you're like, what's going on? And you gotta, it's too complex to try to remember where you were before that. And everyone's telling you what to do. And you're just trying to survive: food, water, shelter. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's not enough time to step back and say, hey, let's pause. Let's really try to think this through. Because, everyone's like, hey, go. Today's a new day. Like you got to get, you got to make money. You got to pay rent. You know what I mean? And it just doesn't make sense to me. And it's never made sense to me. So you know what? I'll use my free time to try to understand where exactly I am, what we're doing, and why we're doing it. And, the answer
to live up
is
to your namesake. This is your Sherman's March, man. You're marching us into a new calendar here, a new system.
Somebody's that's it. I was telling you earlier. There's 3 branches of Sherman's, and one like created Connecticut, the other marched through Georgia and burned it down, and then there's my branch full of like black sheep and rebels and just weirdos, and so. Yeah, I guess this is what we get to do is burn down the Gregorian calendar, and I'm happy to do it.
Absolutely. Happy to do it. We're happy to do it with you, man. Because look, just what we're seeing here. Do you mind just going to the slide before and then back again? This is, oh God, or the side-by-side comparison that you had prearranged already.
No big deal.
No big fucking deal. But it's again so fascinating when you look at it like this. Look at this is honestly it. If you look at it like that. Now, are you still calling them months because it's more of a moon thing? Or are you gonna like rename them and shit? Are you gonna have some fun with that?
I mean, so here's the delicate balance of it all, right? Is balancing the math and the science and the logic with practicality and you know what I mean, not getting writ off as like a crazy person immediately all the time. And so what I tried to do is keep things as familiar as possible while radically changing them so that, you know what I mean? Because like it was like first I was thinking, all right, what's the 5th season of the year called, right? Like I could make up a name. I could make up, Blorgadoo season or whatever. But then people are like, what? Like what are you talking about? Like I didn't name it. Yeah. I didn't name it the Shermanian calendar because like that's not what it's not my system. It's the Earth's system. You know what I mean? Like this is something way beyond me, and I'm just kind of a messenger here.
You're pointing out that we should put water on the plants instead.
Right. That's it. Like so I do call the breakdown of, within each season there are 2 months. And then there's one day, which serves as a midpoint of the season, which is a mid-season day. And that isn't necessarily part of either month. You know what I mean? It's just kind of it's a free agent, but it's still contained within the unit of the season. So like there aren't right. So there's been previous calendar proposals. One that often people like to bring up is the French Revolution calendar. So back during the French Revolution, that's when they created the metric system, which, again, that was the same sort of idea of taking the power of weights and measures out of the powerful in the ruling class and standardizing them. So, there's actually consistency that we can measure these things from a scientific nature. They tried to do the same thing with time to a bit of a lesser degree of success. And so they tried to create a 10-month, 36-day month, it had 30 days, 12 30 days months. And then you have these 5 extra days that they just kind of lumped at the end as like a festival period between, the end of December and the start of the next one, start of January. A lot of calendar proposals have done that. They're the international fixed calendar, the quarter, I don't know. Doesn't really matter what all the names are, but that's what they like to do with these extra days. I call them dingleberry days because I'm just a crude guy, I guess. I don't know, but they're just hanging there. You know what I mean? They're like, well, it's not contained in any of these other parts of the system. They're just kind of there, and you got to deal with them.
Part of the experience every now and then.
Little itchy. Yeah. You know what I mean? But what this does is it takes those dingleberry days and they're self-contained within a larger unit. So therefore, like a season is 73 days, like full stop. You know what I mean? Like, and that's just a way to standardize time so that you can measure it consistently and through an objective scientific sort of lens. And what's also cool is that this isn't what it does when you do that and you create an anchored system like that is the calendar, or this calendar system, is now what is called a floating measure in metrology, where a floating measure versus a fixed measure would be like there's a ruler, 12 inches ruler, right? Say the only ruler that we had was etched in a boulder in Omaha, Nebraska, right? And so if you wanted to measure something, you have to bring it to the system to measure it, versus putting a ruler or the markings of a ruler on a piece of wood that you can then bring wherever you go to measure things. So that's what this system does, because right now I can, if we wanted to start a measuring time right now on the 27th of October and, through the, a full year, I could do it with my calendar, 5 73-day seasons, just like it is right now, lined up to the winter solstice. You can't do that with a Gregorian calendar. What are we going to do? We're going to start measuring a 31-day month, and then a 28-day month, and then a 30-day month, and then a 31-day month. Like, it doesn't, like, it's point. You can't do it. And so what this does is it allows the user to actually take that ruler and carry it with them to go measure things that, like, say I wanted to measure my wall or my, the size of my house or something. I can't pick up my house and go to Nebraska and line it up to a boulder. Like, you have to bring something to it. So it kind of frees you from this, this fixed system that
it's arbitration.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Fixed arbitration is what it is. It's fixed fuckery.
Yeah, that's it. And
so,
yeah.
How does this affect astrology when we're talking about the importance of that in most people's lives? Like, what impact does this have on that?
I mean, from like a general standpoint of the astrological signs, they're still there. You know what I mean? That's what's nice about them, right? Is they're describing the constellations as they come into view as we make our celestial journey. So from like from the broadest standpoint, I mean, not much. I mean, it's the same astrological signs are in the same spaces. The difference would be, instead of it, a new sign starting on a different day of the year every year, it'll start consistently. So what is it, the 23rd that the Scorpio sign starts? Let's see, the 23rd is the 15th of early fall, a Saturn day. And so it's always going to start on the 15th of early fall, a Saturn day. It's not going to, next year be on a Jupiter day or a Uranus day or whatever. And then, so a little bit more in the system is what I like about it is it creates this sort of anchoring where, today, like I was saying, today's the 19th of fall. It's a Mercury day. Next year, the 27th of October will still be the 19th of fall and Mercury day. I think there's something in there from an astrological standpoint of, Mercury days have a certain quality to them. You know what I mean? Venus
like Fridays
days
have a vibe, Mondays have a vibe.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And so I think there's something in there. I'm not quite sure what it is, and I'm not like super well versed in astrology. All I know about astrology, honestly, is I'm a Scorpio, and Scorpios are the best. So, like,
as a Virgo, I disagree, but that's because that's what I do.
That's fair. But like, I do think that there's something to this anchoring of things, because I think. So I've I talked a lot about how I've interviewed scientists and all that, but I've also interviewed astrologers. I and looked into all these other different aspects of time that we are used to, and I think astrology makes sense from a standpoint of it's like the time of year that you're born in. People are acting differently. People are doing things differently. The seasons are in different points of time. So, if you're born during harvest season, that's going to affect you somehow. Your basic imprint on the world. If you're born in the middle of winter, you're not going to be outside much until spring. If you're born in the middle of summer, you might be outside a lot more. You know what I mean? And these sorts of things just like affect you from a personality standpoint, from a I can't really explain all of it, but I think that can also go back to what day you're born on. Because like you're saying, there's certain vibes to certain days. So I was born on a Sunday, you know what I mean? But like, I don't always observe my birthday on a Sunday because, it's slowly shifting throughout time. But I think there's something to that where, like, what were we doing on that Sunday? There was football going on. I probably went to, there was probably some church services going on or whatever. And so that kind of, trickles on into your life and your personality in one way, shape, or form. And so with this system being fixed, I was born on a Mars day in this current calendar, the new calendar. So, and I'm always celebrating on a Mars day. And I think Mars days have a certain degree of a quality to them. Independence Day was on a Mars day. Mars, the god of war. You know what I mean? It's a interesting, you know what I mean? Like there's things going on.
This is what I was going to point out. You've nailed it. You answered it before, and you made me even more curious about this concept as you answered. As I was thinking the question in my head, you were answering it the whole time. And I'm just like, and then what about? And then you answered that. And then I go, This is why we do that little couple of seconds before the shows, by the way, guys. So
I love it.
All right. Now, with this as well, this is something I think you've tapped into tremendously, is that there's more consistency in people, personalities, and psyops that we're going to see under your system. And here's why. Like you said, there's a metric, there's a flow of Mars days. There is a Mondays have that, hashtag Gur Mondays vibe, right? So I think that what you'll find is that, like you said, maybe the psyops where they really fuck our country over only happen on Mars days. And we could sort of, in those windows, say, you know what, country's going to be fucked in this way somehow. Another degree of that would be that you may be able, not necessarily to typecast people, but you could get a better read on folks based on the consistency of what type of personality comes out on making days consistent. Like you said, you were born on a Mars day. Mars days have a certain quality. And to say that now I'm celebrating my birthday on a Thursday, it's it doesn't line up. Again, it's destabilizing. It doesn't harmonize. And so what you've pointed out here is perhaps, again, a harmony, a cycle that's going on. Not only it's psychological, where there's repeating patterns, but you may have hit on a way to really see and predict them in a greater degree. Again, to this with, damn it, I had it and it's gone now. Either way, that's what I mean to say, is that this whole thing may be very much more patternistic and psychological than we think. But your system is going to, I think, reveal a lot of crazy cool shit, dude.
I mean, I totally agree. And it's one of those, we've discussed it a couple times. Death by 1,000 cuts is just like trying to get steady footing on sand, where when it's constantly changing, not a lot, you know what I mean? But enough just enough that you can't, I remember we had a picnic with a bunch of buddies, a couple years ago, and it was a lot of fun. It was just one of those random organic moments that all of a sudden we all showed up at the state park and had a blast, like and then a couple years later we were like, oh, when was that? Oh, that was around now, but you just couldn't figure it out because it was like, well, but it was a weekend. So it wasn't today. It was, and it's just this like, it's kind of like, what is that? It's the Nelson Bergeron or whatever, or the thing where like they kind of like zap you with a shock and you're like, oh, okay. Like, I don't know, where am I again? Like it keeps you, all you can do is focus on the current right now. And it's very hard to extend data analysis or any type of analysis, month to month, year to year, season to season, because of that. And, it's one of the issues that comes up, and I like to ask scientists all the time. I'm like, how long is a month? When you run an experiment, how long is a month? And they're like, well, we like to run months, 28 days. And it's like, well, there's 13 28-day months in a year. So like, how are you actually, you're going to submit something to the FDA that is off by adding an entire month into the year. And then that still doesn't account for the extra day. It's 13 months in one day when you divide by 28. So it's like, there's this I don't know, man. It's just so fucked.
I love that you're pointing out the absurdity to it, because as we're talking about this here, it gets more and more ridiculous, but it also gets more and more obvious, which is, I think, what the crux of all of this is, dude. Because that's what this show, this conversation, all this is about. And encouraging critical thinking. That's all we're wanting to do here, and I think we've done the shit out of it. So I want to make sure that you get all the slides that you have in, but I also want to make sure that we can wrap so that we have plenty of stuff to talk about right after this. So stay on the thing. Okay. So did you have more that you wanted to walk us through with this? Because, dude, this is fascinating. And honestly, I've got to get you booked for a quick turnaround too, so that we can go deeper into this, because I'm going to put this out. We're going to field some questions and have you come back.
Love it. I could literally talk about time like forever. And yeah, I got a few more slides that I don't know. Let's see what we got.
Let's
next.
definitely get those in for this one, but I want to make sure that we can get you booked again, because this is so mind-blowing that I absolutely have a lot of thoughts on this, but they're going to take some, ironically, time for me to come back with you on, because I need to do some of my own data for our next conversation. But I fucking love this, and I cannot wait to jump into your cycle and see about adapting it into my own, because it just, again, I feel that it's going to be one of these great tellers of all kinds of fuckery that's going on here, dude.
Definitely, dude, 100%. And yeah, can't wait to get back. Like, again, like, there's a lot to dissect, so we'll get in there. So, all right. So this chart is a bar chart of the same thing we're looking at back here, is just like the daily sunlight amount, bar chart of it. And it just kind of shows where you get a nice bell curve, normal curve for the seasonal calendar, the new calendar. And then you get a lagging indicators on the Gregorian calendar. It's just off. It's just
out of phase.
Off.
If you were to lay them over, they're out of phase. Like musically, this is what like what we talk about with the 440 hertz and stuff, how they just adapted the music to be just out of phase from harmony or something beneficially harmonious.
Exactly. And it's not enough to really perceive it, but it's enough that it's not enough to be able to equivocate it and speak to it and really put it into words, but it's enough to feel on that intuitive level. Let's see the next one. This is kind of so this is just statistical analysis of, I know, I'm sorry.
No, I love how clean yours is and just how much of a bunch of bullshit that is over there. Please go ahead.
Right. That's exactly it. Is so statistical analysis of the units of time that we use in the Gregorian calendar. It's horseshit. Like you said, there's a 91 and a quarter days in a season. 30.42. That's the mean. The median is it's all jacked up. There's a range, plus minus 2 days in a season, plus minus 3 days in a month. That's like 10% from February to March. That's a 10% difference, which is a lot. You know what I mean? That's statistically significant. Standard deviations, there's variance, there's skew. The units of the new calendar, that's it. There's none of that, because they're all, you know what I mean? They're standard. They're standardized units. And like this is the like what you're saying of being able to figure out like what exactly is going on, the fuckery, as you called it, or the data analysis from month to month, year to year. Like you can't do it in the old calendar, and that's why they employ accountants for their entire job is to seasonally adjust by 2 days so that you can compare things from one period to the next. And
it is a destabilizing element for sure.
Yeah.
Like 100%. For fucking sure. This is silly. I mean, it's so silly, dude. But I love the brilliance of the simplicity of this. It's just sans fuckery. It's awesome.
Right. All right. And then this next one is this is the current week is brought to you by geocentrism. And we can talk about whether or not geocentrism is the proper way to view the unit or the solar system. I don't know. I'm not gonna say I know. I'm just saying that Sunday
you and I will have that conversation, because it could just be luminaries, right? Okay, cool. But follow the same patterns and characteristics. But I love the way that you broke this down, and we will have that fucking conversation, because it's going to be a fun one with you. I know that.
Yeah. So basically, the week is named after the days of the week is named after what they thought the planets were aligned at back in the classical realm. So they thought the first planet was the sun, and then the moon, and then Tuesday is actually the Swedish or Nordic for Mars, Wednesday is Mercury, Thursday is Jupiter, Friday is Venus, and Saturday is Saturn. So I like to bring this up just because that's why, we were talking earlier about kind of like I'm proposing these radical changes, but I'm also trying to keep it familiar. And so there's 9 days in a week in this new system that I'm proposing. And I'm proposing that the days of the week, rather than, I was like, is it Friends Day? First day is Communication Day, and then it's Friends Day, right. And then it's, you know what I mean? So I decided to go by the 9 planets that I learned in kindergarten, which was Mercury Day through Pluto Day. And, I'm down. I'm bringing Pluto back. Yeah, Pluto's a planet, folks. Yeah, I don't know. I'd say So that's why I named the 9 days of the week after the planets, just because I'm trying to keep things as familiar as possible so that like people don't get caught up in like, who is this weirdo, wants me to observe a Flebity Day. You know what I mean? It's like,
I would have also accepted the Justice League members as the names of the week. Okay. Just so that we know, or the X-Men. I mean, I'm just saying we have options. Okay.
That's fair.
Just maybe parentheses again, off to the side. We'll let it kind of, and then we'll put that. That's the beautiful thing about Pluto this in parentheses later. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's the beautiful thing about it is honestly, this is fully customizable. If you want a 9-day week calendar named after those, you know what I mean? The Justice League or X-Men or whatever, like, we can do that. You know what I mean?
To embody like a Ganesh Day, a day that you just fucking crush all your obstacles,
right?
Or a couple of days where you're just, that you're fueled. For some reason, you have additional energy. Cool. Those are Ganesh days. I've got the fucking energy to tackle. And that's where I'm going to toss my obstacles is on those days because I know are my more challenging of tasks, whatever.
Those would be good for the mid-seasons because you get 5 mid-season days a year. And it's a great time you're right in the middle of the season. You get to observe what happened in the first half. You getting ready for the next half. And
Ganesh, crushing them like dingleberries, dude.
Just do it. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Let's see, what else do we got? Oh, today's the 19th of fall. And so what I can tell you with exact precision is the year is 85% over. And that's what I love about this calendar is it keeps you grounded where every season is exactly 20% of the year. So every month is exactly 10% of the year. So when you're 2 weeks through, which we are right now, 2 weeks through a month, that's exactly 5%. So like, but you can't do that with the Gregorian calendar. You can't, first of all, it's not even lined up to the solstices. So you can't, it's already off by 12 days, which is like 4%, something like that.
It's a harmonic tone, by the way. So that's interesting. 12.
And then, so I don't know, man. It's just one of those things that you're able to intuitively on a day-to-day basis just know where you are versus if I'm like, hey, it's the middle of November, it's like I don't know how what does that even mean, like where is that even in the spectrum of the month of I don't know. It's just horse hockey, bro. I can't handle it.
I love that you can't handle it because now I'm a stickler for how we've just let it go, and how okay we've been with being so blasé about not being so aware of what we're doing here, our cycles or what's going on around us. And actually what's more to that is letting it be handed to us without any sort of scrutiny about the design at all, which is what you did as please tell me the name of that again, metametician?
Metrologist.
Metrologist. I was way off.
That was close.
Samsonite.
You had the M. You had the M.
Right. What you're pointing out here is just, again, fascinating. And so the fact that we're so blasé about this, it bothers me now. And so now I don't want to be. And so I'm pumped to get this in and start looking at things this way.
I'm quickly going to switch because I've got all these quotes that I like. This is one that I found yesterday that was great. Frederick Douglass. Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. And so, like, that's kind of what you were exactly saying is like we're in this system that we just accept and we don't question it, and we're taught not to question it. We're taught that it's right when it's wrong, and we know it's wrong on an intuitive level, and it constantly wears you down. And it drains your energy rather than invigorates you. And so it's kind of one of those things where you know what I mean? Like I don't know. So you just made me think of this quote just now. So
but you pulled it, and then you've got a Tesla quote, which we talked about earlier. And you know what you said also about seeing what they taught us first. I love this, dude. The fact that you went back to your first grade classroom and said, okay, what was I learning back then? Man, seasons were pretty damn important to them. And then to make sure that I wrote a certain way was very important to them. And then I had little, planets and a ball and everything like that hanging around in this skeletal system, right, for our UK guys. It's interesting what you're indoctrinated it with first, which is the way that I'd put it, not taught, indoctrinated with. You're saying this is what we are going to prescribe that or how you operate in this realm.
Right. Exactly. And so then this is just that sunlight chart that we looked at earlier with just a little extra. Right now, I just had to pull it up just because, the beauty of serendipity of us scheduling on the exact middle of early fall.
So cool.
Here we are. You get to, it's so easy to track.
Let's just, for the audience's sake, you and I had a phone call day before yesterday, right? I reached out to you after finding your video, whatever. And so we had a phone call. I scheduled you for next week. And then as we talked throughout we had 30 more minutes of conversation. I was like, fuck that. What are you doing Friday? And so I just got you in early, which happens to be this day. Because I was just too excited to have this. And this is going to be a quick out. So I can't wait to put this out, man.
It's a beautiful world, man. It's a beautiful system that we live in, and I
like
love
this
it.
too because you're and yes, this is a beautiful realm. To your design here, I'm interested in sort of a graphic that would track this, because it's like this beautiful spiral that you've created here for us to sort of enjoy throughout the year. If you turned this on its side, for instance, it would go through that pattern visually and sort of be like a day-by-day calendar tick as we go by so that we can follow the "you are here." Maybe that's something for your website or something. You can put up a daily graphic that sort of floats along because it is in this harmoniously beautiful pattern, man.
Yeah, dude, that's definitely it. There's so much. This is actually one of the problems that I've had throughout the whole thing is there's so many applications of time. There's so many different ways to represent it. There's so many different ways to explain it. And people are, you know what I mean? Like it's such a dense, complex subject to get into. And all of a sudden you're in a rabbit hole and the rabbit hole has rabbit holes. And you know what I mean? Like that I just kind of sometimes get overwhelmed and you know what I mean? It's tough to bring it all together, but I love that idea. And I will, you know what I mean? I went to a code school for a couple years to now I'm coding now. And so now I can maybe put this into a website and kind of, like you say, set it up to help
David
track
Weiss's app. He has this amazing app where it tracks the solar calendars and things like this. It's just an app you can download, but it's his, proprietary type of a model. And it's awesome, and tons of people have it. It'd be a wonderful way also to keep this in people's minds as we adapt to it, right? Maybe something that you can add alerts to and all that kind of shit. We'll talk, man.
Totally.
If I could be a service, let me know.
Out.
Absolutely.
100%.
You're doing it, dude.
That's it.
It's so cool to catch you at this phase of it. Because how long have you been doing this? How long have you...
So the eureka moment that I was talking about in the kitchen, that was in January-ish of 2017. So and that's when I abandoned the rest of my inventor's journal, which I still have notes on. And, when I hit it big, I'll open that back up and, you know what I mean? Like kind of like Thomas Edison start up a whole factory of stuff. Yeah. But, so yeah, it's been since 2017, maybe solid 7 years that I've dedicated most of my free time to. Sometimes been working on it full time, go broke, get a job, gotta make money. You know what I mean? I'm still a slave to the system we're in. That's the toughest part is, so anyways, that's, I've been working on it a better part of a decade. I'd say, cause the research was going on a little bit before the eureka moment.
Yeah. So this isn't something, and there's nothing wrong with that. You're coming out with a week after you've discovered this, and we'd still have you on and we'd talk about it. But I like that you've sat with this, you've gotten more adapted to it. How does your circadian rhythm feel? Like, you feel more ready for seasons when they change? Do you feel like you have sort of a leg up on all of us just biologically from this understanding?
Definitely. I'm cause all right. So here's an example is, Thanksgiving is one of these floating holidays since it's based on a day of the week, which can change between dates of the month, right? So one year Thanksgiving can occur on, hold on, I have it written down here. Thanksgiving can occur anytime between November 22nd and November 28th. All right. And so that means one year you can celebrate Thanksgiving on the 22nd and you've got whatever full month from current standards, 22nd to the 25th to do your holiday shopping, all that stuff. The next year, it'll go to the 28th. So you lose a full week of preparation, of execution, of, you got to go to everybody's Christmas parties. So you're running around even more hectic than normal. And if you're not able to step back and understand from this anchored system of, oh, that's why, it just feels like it's a tougher year. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know why it was so crazy this year. Well, I do. It's because you had a full less week to play, you know what I mean? To prepare and do
to this fuckery, dude. Yeah. Yes, this Archon Moon Matrix fuckery.
Right. Whereas when I flip from early fall to late fall every year, it's, November 14th is mid-fall every year. So I know at that point in time, I've got 36 days until December 20th. You know what I mean? Like I'm there. I'm ready all the time.
This is one of those things that even now my mom is going to be on board with just because of what you just said. So now, does the current calendar, your calendar, give us that extra week of shopping before Christmas, hun? That's her question from my mom, and right. I will take that in the form of your answer.
I mean, to the degree that you will be ready for it, yes. I mean, because November 15th comes around and instead of being subject to, all right, I got to wait until Thanksgiving and then that will tell me it's time to start shopping. You'll just have that intuitive preparation of, all right, we're 36 days out. We've got, 10% of the year left and I can prepare versus waiting until what the Gregorian calendar tells you when it's time to start doing things. And since they're based on this sort of shifty, sort of death by a thousand cuts basis, you know what I mean? You can't do anything about it if that's what you're going to anchor your time on.
You're so right when you put it that way too. And thank you for that. My mom's going to love that answer.
I appreciate her. She should get some of these calendars. They're great.
I'm telling you, I'm going to load up on these damn things. You and I are going to talk, okay? We may offer them through the show. So I want to, okay, so speaking of fuckery, and this is actually going to be my last question for you, and we're going to wrap here only because I've got another commitment. But dude, this is fantastic. Okay, so speaking of fuckery, daylight savings time, as we march into this bunch of goddamn nonsense or whatever, I know that, how does your calendar play into that, or what are your thoughts on it in general?
That's another frequently asked question that I field all the time. And here's my answer is clock time has its problems. Definitely. Big time. Clock time has its problems. I'm focused on calendar time right now. I'll get to clock time when I can. I love
that you're just, it's on the list, folks. We're doing calendars first.
We're going to get to it. And like, personally, my preference is I hate daylight savings. I mean, I don't care. Let's pick one. You know what I mean? One or the other, either standard time, daylight savings time, and let's just keep it there. But the twice a year changing of the clocks, that's not good for anything, honestly. It just messes with your like circadian rhythm, your consistency, all of the things that you've been trying to build throughout the year just gets totally thrown out the window. So yeah,
So I'm going to retract
I don't like it.
Our collective statement and say that it is good for something. It's good for those who want this place in chaos and destabilized, and to have you not get those balanced, consistent forms of experience here. So it is bad business for them. Yeah.
And that's why, what was it, last year, 2 years ago, when the Senate passed a reform to end daylight savings, and yet somehow it couldn't get through the House. You know what I mean? And it's like, the one thing everybody agree. You go to any state, you go to any red, blue, purple, like everybody hates daylight savings time, and yet our leaders can't agree on it. Like, what's going on? You know what I mean? Like, right. Yes.
I think they can agree on it, and they've agreed to keep it destabilized. And so that's the whole point, I think, man. And so, yes. And then you and I need to speak of greater truths of deeper fuckery going on here on the next one. But brother, I just cannot thank you enough for this, man. This has been absolutely outstanding.
Hey man, I really appreciate it. And yeah, I didn't get through all my slides, didn't get through all the stuff I wanted to show you, but that's what's beautiful. We've got next time I'll show show you the video. I've got a bunch of other stuff.
I don't want to rush you out. Let's do the video.
No. It's all good. It's all good. Okay.
Let's do the video because I'm gonna. I'm not an asshole here. I just
no.
I didn't know we were gonna go this
that.
balls deep because I'm so excited about this topic with you, and so I should have scheduled something a lot longer with you. I should have known it from the conversation we had the other night. But guys, check in the show notes all the ways to find him. He does have another video for us. So again, check the video version of the show in the show description so you can check out all the charts that he's shown. The math on the way that it lines up vibrationally is something I'm so fascinated, dude. And that is a graph you guys have got to see. So thanks again, Tom. Please, what else do you have for us, brother?
This is badass. This is actually a perfect way to ride out. This is a video I made back when I was first rolling this system out to the public and trying to explain my thoughts and stuff. So I call this the briefest history of time. And let's just let it run. Did you know time began in a barn nearly 2,000 years ago? However, that was nearly 800 years after a man raised by wolves developed time. But then, in 1927, scientists discovered that time really began 13.8 billion years before that. But by then, time was an international conspiracy co-opted by the British monarchy. They even made George Washington move his birthday. So it's easy to see why the calendar has always been in shambles. Irrational, irregular units hobbled together. Its power fought over by mystics and politicians, all trying to tell you how to use your time. That was until 2017, when a team of American scientists discovered the lost fifth season of the year. True standard units contained in a year. They even discovered a new unit of time. Welcome to the future. Brought to you by the new calendar.
Attention all time.
Oh, sorry,
dude. That's okay. Dude, who did the voiceover for that? Doc Hammer? That sounded like some Venture Brothers shit. Are you a fan of theirs?
I've seen Venture Brothers. I'm not most well versed in it, but no, I did the voiceovers.
My compliments. It was a brilliant job. Amazingly cool video. One more question for you before I let you go, actually, because ancient cultures, Mayans, other timekeepers and calendars and things like that, what do they have to say about your calendar?
I haven't been able to talk to the Mayans, unfortunately.
They shagged ass, didn't they?
But honestly, I think that there's a base level of truth that I'm proposing that is undeniable. So I'm fully confident I'd be able to talk to anybody, any time period, and notwithstanding getting beheaded for religious reasons, be able to let people see the truth. And I mean, the Mayans, their calendar is sick. You know what I mean? Like, that is a super precise, super accurate. And that's just not just the solar calendar. That's the fucking galaxy around I mean, like, they know, they really knew what they were doing. And so, I mean, I've got nothing but respect for a lot of the different calendar makers out there. Even to this day, there's people out there besides me that are proposing systems. Just one of the main problems is a lot of people, when they propose new calendars, they're accepting the premise of the Gregorian calendar.
Right.
And that's the problem is unless you're starting fresh from scratch with your, most modern math, science, astronomy, that sort of stuff, like, I don't think you're going to be able to create, can you destroy the master's house with the master's tools? That's something that we used to talk about a lot in I took a course in college called what is it, Ages of Dissent or something. It was all about just like American rebellion and just how Americans are like, fuck the system, fuck the free world, like, you know what I mean? And like, so that was something that we often talked about. And I think the answer is no. I don't think you're really able to destroy the master's house with the master's tools, because the master is going to teach you how to use the tools. And that goes back to the indoctrination that we're subject to from day one.
Tom Sherman, dude, you're one of the coolest, most awesome dudes I've ever talked to. This is a fantastic episode, just a banger through and through, and I can't wait to have you on for a fucking million more, dude. All the ways to find you, of course, located down in the show description. Thank you, my friend.
Anytime. Let me know. I'm happy to be back. And yeah, if anybody has questions, definitely drop them. I will answer everything as much as I can.